Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap, and it's time to make some really fun cards using my efficient card making method. Now, if you've never taken a workshop from me before, what I'd like to do is take a card structure and then just really scientifically or mathematically calculate the very best way to make that card in assembly line style. So you just grab the papers, you follow the recipe, and you end up with the cards as you wished. And then what I encourage you to do is just watch the entire video, see how everything falls into place, and then go back and watch it again at your convenience and make the project right along with me. So let's get started. Okay, so today we are going to make what I call a wiper card. It has a little bit of a pop-up functionality to it. So when you pull outward on the card, the sentiment pops up kind of like a windshield wiper blade. Isn't that fun? Now I have a really kind of nailed down the whole method for making these. I've made them several times in the past and just sort of keep honing the method. And this is the first time I've designed this formula in a 5x7 size that I created recently. So I think it'll be a fun task, and we're going to do it very efficiently. So what you need to make the cards are anything from your stash that coordinates. I am using papers from Club Scrap's one of our most recent collections from January called What's Up Buttercup. So I'm beginning with, I've got a print here in the collection that will trim, and then I have 4 plain colors: yellow, pink, green, and purple. And typically our collections do include at least 4 different colors of stock, as well as I'm using a white, but a lighter color that you can stamp on if you choose to stamp. For my non-stampers out there, Club Scrap does design these clever cut-aparts. They're sized to specific card making workshops that we produce with our collections each month, but they certainly can be adapted to fit onto your finished cards if you wish. So one of the things about making cards, if you don't already know this from me, is that it's important when we trim the paper that we trim in cooperation with the future folds we're going to make, so that we are folding with the grain direction of the paper rather than against the grain direction of the paper, which is much harder. So if you've not yet identified or learned how to identify the grain of a square sheet of paper, just hold it by the middle of one edge and study whether or not it dips or if it's very stiff. So this to me is pretty dippy. And if I rotate it this way, it's very stiff. So now I know the grain runs from left to right, or it dips easily left to right. And according to my instructions, that's the way I want it to go into the trimmer base. I'm going to repeat that for a second sheet of paper in this pink too. Very dippy in this way. It's very stiff. So I want it to go left to right, dipping easily left to right in this case. Now, on the instructions, if you see an arrow pointing left to right, that's your indication that that's the way the grain should go. If it's pointing top to bottom, then you'll want the paper to do the same. All right, so I'm cutting 2 sheets at once, and my first cut here is going to be at 8.5 inches, and I'm using my favorite trimmer, making sure the paper is flush at the top edge here for a nice 90-degree cut. Push down firmly on the clear bar, especially because you have 2 sheets of paper here. Now I just want you to rotate the paper so it's horizontal, and we're going to make 2 cuts. The first one's at 10, and then 5. Okay, so now I've got 4 pieces that are the same size here, 2 in pink and 2 in yellow. I'm going to set these aside to be scored. And then I've got this little strip here. My goal really is to not have a lot of scraps, so I'm going to trim this horizontally at 6. So this can be set aside in a pile, and I'm going to try to find other pieces of the same size to use with it. And then this I'm also going to set aside. And now I have this final 12-inch piece here. I'm going to trim starting at 10 1/4, and then 7 1/2, and 4. Okay, now after all that trimming, I'm going to sort things out. Here I've got kind of a tall panel. Next I have a square. And then next I have a pretty small rectangle. I'm going to trim this rectangle horizontally. So put it in the long way to trim at 2 3/4. And that's going to create a square for me. I want that. And then we also fell off the end just a little scrap that we're not going to be using. And just another little piece that can be like a scrap. So I'm going to take these smallest pieces and just put them all together in a pile that I can use later if I like. Now, We're going to do that whole thing one more time. So checking grain with green here. This is my third paper color, and I want it dipping left to right. There we go. So we have the green and purple this time, and we'll repeat. So let's go at 8.5 again, and then rotate and cut at 10 and 5. And these two pieces will then be scored. I'm going to set those aside in my scoring pile. And then I've got this other strip, which I'm at 6. And that gave me this narrow piece, and then kind of an item for my maybe I'll use it pile. And now for the long strip here, I'm going to start at 10.25, 7.5, and 4. And I'll distribute the larger piece to the matching piles, the square. Then we have the narrow rectangle to trim at 2.75. Put that on that pile. And then again, I have some scraps. So basically the only scraps you're going to have are these little pieces. So it's pretty awesome for when you're making a set of 4 really cool interactive cards. That's all you really have to do with as far as scrap. Now from the print, we're going to do some different cuts, and these are really nice and easy. So let's place this in the trimmer. We're going to cut at 9 and 4.5. And let's stack the two pieces that are the same size. These are both 4.5, and we're going to cut at 6. I'll set these aside in another pile of my choosing. And then lastly, we're going to take this final strip and we're going to trim it into 4 equal size squares. I'm going to start out at 9 and then go to 6 and then finally 3. Okay. And that is the last trim. If you want to do some stamping, you can do that by following step 4 in my instructions. I'll quick run that with you so we have it done. So this is 11.5 on the white. And then 9, 6.5, and 3.25. I'm going to stack these two. Now we're going to make more than 4 panels. We're only making 4 cards, but why not just make some extra spare panels in case something with your stamping doesn't go as planned. So let's go at 11.25. With the two, these are 2 pieces that are 3.75 by 12. And then we'll slide down to 7.5 and 3.75. Okay, what that gives me, cleverly here, is a total of 6 panels that can be used for the outside of our cards. It's nice to have those backups, right? Now let's take the other 2 strips that are the same size and we'll trim at 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5. And now, once again, if I get rid of my 2 little scraps here, I've got a nice series of panels that can be used for the inside of my wiper card if I want to stamp on them. So again, that whole step with the white is completely optional, and you just have just a few minor little scraps here at the end. And again, if you're using printed cut-up parts, you just trim those into little sections that you can use to decorate your cards, just with a few adaptations. Now it's time to do a little bit of scoring, and I do have a score pal here. It's one of my favorite little tools in my studio, and I really don't have a lot of different types of tools that I use, but you can see here now that we have 2 each of the same size in 4 different colors, and we're going to score every piece the exact same way. So first of all, and this is kind of important, we're going to make some twists and turns here. I want you to score at 6.5. So this is on the long edge, or the score horizontally. Now take the paper and flip it from the bottom to the top. And then this time score at 7.25. So you're adding 2 score lines that are just 3/4 of an inch apart. One will be a bump and one will be an indentation. So then you just go through and you repeat that. So again, 6.5 and 7.25. And don't forget that flip, 6.5, 7.25, and that's going to help. That little flip is going to help you make better folds later. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward through this repetitive process. All right, with that scoring done, we are more than halfway there. Now the rest is just assembly and creativity. So what I'd like to do is just begin by showing you the basic structure of how I deal out my cards. Okay, so let's just say I want to start with purple, and then I'm going to do just like if you're dealing a deck of cards on family game night. And then I'm going to go yellow and then purple and then green. But the order doesn't really matter. I'm just choosing contrast maybe as I go through. So I think 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have these printed panels. So let's distribute and decide where our printed panels are going to go. I'm going to put that one there. This maybe has a nice little amount of yellow. Pretty. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now each one of these cards will receive a little anchoring strip that basically gets attached to the front of the panel. So the way I'm going to do that, I have all 4 colors here. You notice how purple is first in this card. So I'm going to take the purple strip and put it here. This card base is yellow, so I'm going to put yellow there. This card base is pink, so I'm going to put pink there. This one is green, and I go back around and end with green. It's, it's some way we can do things here. Okay, then I can kind of follow through with that. There should be a panel that is just like the larger rectangle. This is 3.5 by 4 inches. So do you see how it's purple? So I'm just going to redistribute the colors, taking inspiration from the piece that came before it. It's kind of a neat way to do it. And that way you also make sure that all of the colors are represented. Okay, so now I'm moving on to yet another color. This was pink. This was green, purple, and then yellow. Look at that. And then I'm going to distribute a square to each card. So these are printed and it doesn't really matter. I'll just go with what matches. And lastly, I do get another color. So maybe for this one, I will match the card base. I don't know. It's up to you what you want to do here. That's going to be part of your wiper. Now I'm going to have us go ahead and make this yellow card together just because it's so bright and cheerful, and you'll be able to see easily as I'm working on the project what our steps are going to be. So let's begin with those 2 matching card bases. If you look at the base, you'll notice that there is the score line, and I want you to find the first I want you to find the bump of the score. There's that indentation here and there's the bump. If it's backwards, just flip it over. Now what I want you to do is bury the bump of that score line on the inside of the fold. And then that exposed yet another bump, right? So I'm going to just turn that the other way to make what I would call a pleat. And if you want, you can burnish your pleat with a bone folder. And you can go ahead and repeat that for the other one that matches exactly. So here's our bump. Fold, there's the other bump buried inside. So that the rule of thumb with score lines is to always bury the bump. Okay, so we're getting close already. Now I want you to find the series of square pieces here. So I've got the large pink, the print, and then a matching yellow to go on top. Let's take a look at this first pink largest layer here. What I want you to do is take if you happen to have a Clev Scrap grid ruler, that's great, because here's a neat way to use these 45-degree angle markings on the end of the ruler. I'm just going to take the corner of my panel, and this is the 1/2 inch line of my grid ruler. So I'm going to bring the corner into the 1/2 inch line while I also align it with that 45-degree angle. It might take you a little bit to figure out which direction to put the ruler and so on. I've got my X at the top here with the card on my right. Now what I want to do is just bend the card along the edge of the ruler to form the perfect little triangle. And that's really the point of all that. We just want a nice little triangle. So if you feel comfortable just folding over a corner and keeping it as triangular as possible, that's the general goal. Now that I've determined this little corner, this is going to be the bottom of my sentiment and this is going to be the top. So I'll take my 1/4 inch corner chomper here. I've got a 1/2 inch option over a 1/4 inch option. So if I just slide my piece into the butterfly shaped guide here, I can round just 2 upper corners of all of these nesting panels. I like to have nesting panels. I don't know about you. You could skip these if you wanted. In fact, earlier when we trimmed our white, I then have a panel that can nest on top of this if you choose to stamp your sentiment or write your sentiment or whatever. Now, in order for these panels to nest properly, I do need to clip away a little bit of the bottom corners just one corner of these nesting panels. And don't worry about doing that accurately. No one's going to see it. It's going to be sandwiched inside of your card base later on. So no worries there. We're just prepping for the future. And then center them in place. Okay, so now I have my nested mechanism with my clipped corner or turned up corner. Do need the corner, okay? Next, take the card base that you've prepared with the pleat. I just, for commonality, let's all take our card base and make sure the pleat's on the right where you see the valley first and then a mountain. Then take this piece and be mindful that this is going to be the top. So if you have stamped something and you want to put it on here now, just make sure the top is facing left, okay? I also will use my grid ruler to help me measure a 1/4 of an inch down from the top edge of the card. So 2 cubes on my ruler equal a 1/4 inch. So there you go. I'm all level and I'm pushed into the edge of that valley fold there. And then I can take some bookbinding glue. Now I'm using our glue because it ends up curing really well. And I find that just the 2-way tape isn't quite enough to support the mechanical aspect of the pop-up on this card. And then I can take my adhesive and put it on the top of this tab formed by the pleat. Then grab your other matching piece and we're going to mirror it. So we make a sandwich, pleat on the right here, pleat on the left with this other one. So this is the non-pleated edge. And notice how my pleat looks over here, making a sandwich. I'm just going to place that right on top of the glued area and just align it. And burnish a little bit. At that point, you can just go ahead and flip the card over. And you'll notice you can just turn that back. And you get a mirror of what you just did. So I'm once again going to apply the adhesive to this tab and close. Line up the edges as best as you can and burnish. Now at this point, I have no idea where my little pop-up is going to occur, which is why I assemble the mechanics first so that I don't end up decorating my card and realizing that the pop-up falls out the bottom and faces the wrong direction. Okay, so where do you think our pop-up is going to be? Maybe this way. Up, and there it is. Yay, success. So now we have our mechanical aspect of the card working great. A couple of little decorating tips now. We can take our strip here and I'm going to nest it onto, so the way this formula works, and you don't have to do this part, but if you want to place a panel across the bottom, I'm going to go 1/2 inch up from the bottom edge. And typically for situations like this, I use my grid ruler to give me a nice level. So the line on the ruler is aligned with the edge of the card. So I can rest my panel against the ruler and know that my piece is not crooked. I hate it when I walk away and come back and look at my cards and realize, oh, that was crooked. So we typically include ribbon in our kit. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a little piece of ribbon to my card. I think that kind of kicks it up a notch. And I have a length that just long enough to go around the card panel. And then I'll just take some just regular old tape. Maybe you have some left from Christmas. And layer that on as a nice little anchoring device. And then I will layer before I do that, I'm going to just try to tie in my rounded corners on this as well. So I'll round all 4 corners of my decorative panel. I do like my rounded corners. And then place that here. Now, earlier when we took our white paper, we also prepared a panel for the outside of the card, so we can embellish as we wish with that. So now this will layer beautifully onto the card base. If you want, you could pop dot it and give it a little dimension. And then you can go ahead and stamp this piece, and that's going to be beautiful for our pop-up card. Okay, so let me just show you a few quick stamping tips with our Buttercup collection. So I'm going to begin with the inside card sentiment first, and typically I always protect my work surface with our grid paper pad, but it has multiple uses. So initially I take the clear stamped photopolymer image and I lay it on my grid paper with it as level on the grid as possible. And then my mounting blocks, you can see this is a very well loved mounting block, is also etched with a grid. So that's kind of a thing to watch for. So all I simply need to do to make sure I have a nice level mount is to align the grid of the block with the grid of the paper. Next, I always do a test stamp. Not only that, but to prime the rubber stamp itself. Like, I will rarely ink a stamp and go right directly onto my project. I typically just ink once and then stamp on my grid paper to double check that the stamp is primed well with ink, I don't have any white spots, and that the stamp is level. So at this point I feel ready to stamp the inner sentiment of my pop-up. So there I have my rounded corner piece. This time too I will line it up with the grid on my paper, line the stamp block with the grid on my paper, and then I know I'm level. Not sure if that little process is new to you, but if it is, I hope that it helps. And now I have a lovely sentiment for my card. So at this point, if you would like, you can add something to it if you want, or I'm just going to add a little adhesive and open my pop-up, and then I can nest my sentiment right onto the card base. The best is yet to come. Now, what about the outside of the card? Well, I'm going to replace this with the word Buttercup, and I'll follow that same process to make sure it's level on my mounting block. Then take your favorite nice crisp black ink. We do have inks here at Club Scrap. I recommend colors to match each kit. Do a test run. And then I'll stamp that onto my paper. Now it's kind of cool because this stamp sheet has 3 options to pair with our word Buttercup. We can do buckle up, what's up, or chin up. So I'm going to try buckle up. And once again, follow my mounting procedure for the stamp to make sure it's nice and level. And I'm just going to grab the fuchsia, my fuchsia ink pad, one of my favorite colors, and do a little test run. And then, once I have verified it's well inked, I can nestle that right into my text on the card. Oh, isn't that cute? Now, if I had made an error there, that's the nice part about trimming a few extra panels, is that you can then try again. If you're not happy with your first attempt, you got the back side and you've got others. Okay, now I'm going to take, and it's just really cool when you're working with clear stamps, you can do some fun layering techniques. So I'm going to take our amethyst ink and I'll load this little fill stamp, stamp it off, and I'm going to add it twice to my card base. So I have ink, stamp off, and then stamp again. And I'm going to put that away and then grab my outline ink. And this time I'm not going to stamp off. Oh, isn't that sweet? These are so fun, so cheerful for this time of year. I'm going to use the pink ink again to stamp off, stamp on, and then I'll come back with my fill. How precious is that? Lastly, the sheet comes with an image that looks like absolutely nothing. It's just a bunch of dots. But I'll take our yellow and just give it a little smattering. Isn't that fun? Beautiful. Now all that's left to do is nest this onto my panel. And for that, I'm going to use some of our foam adhesive circles. Love these because they have the little pull tabs on them, making life a lot easier. I have other things to do besides hunt down the edge of a backing on my foam tape. So there you have it. We got those released and layered onto the card. Now, a word about scraps. We have these scraps here. Maybe if you have a little die or a punch or a shape you want to punch out of these. On my completed cards, you'll notice that I just had a little flag-shaped die, and I just cut them out in contrasting colors to make it work with the card. Here you can see I didn't add the white panel. I just stamped it on the color, and that worked great as well. Added ribbon. And all of these ribbons were included in that Buttercup, What's Up Buttercup card kit. So you can definitely adapt all of our card kits to make any card you like, but every card kit that we release does come with full and complete instructions. We've got all the papers, the ribbons, the embellishments, and a download and a video workshop for just $24.95 as a member. It's like taking a card class with me every month. It's super fun. Now, the inspiration for this formula actually came from a collection we released last year called Galaxy. It was from December. And I just want to show you something cool about our formulas. So if you took the same exact trimming instructions that we followed together with different colors of paper, in this case, teal, blue, purple, black, I had a metallic black, and follow the same trimming instructions, you would get another set of cards, which is the beauty of how things work around here at Club Scrap. This is a fun card. It says, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, you were born. Isn't that fun? Got 2 of those. And these are made with those pre-printed cut-aparts. So there was no stamping required to make these cards with our Galaxy card kit. So again, following the same formula, you can be inspired to use what you have, and that's what we're all about. I hope you had a good time learning about how to make that clever wiper card. Maybe at first you thought it would be too difficult, but now that you saw how it all comes together, you're inspired to give it a try, and that would be my dream. In the meantime, if you liked how these card kits were made, consider a Club Scrap page kit or card kit membership. It's how we approach all of our monthly collections so that we send you everything you need and you use everything we send. It would be such an honor to welcome you as a member of the Club Scrap family. In the meantime, I hope to see you in class again soon. Thanks for joining me.